Hi everyone, welcome to Board Game Reviews with Riz. There's a bit of an identity crisis going on with my YouTube channel. My original channel was called Board Game Doctor, since I have a strong interest in sci-fi and Doctor Who, but you know what, that's a story for another time. Today, what we're going to do is talk about the top 10 board games for new board gamers. The ones, in my opinion, that are fun to get started into the hobby. And by the way, I'm not going to have in games like Catan, by the way, don't look over here, Catan or Ticket to Ride. Nothing wrong with those games, but I really wanted to try to get some games that you may not have heard of at this point. So again, top 10. Let's start with number 10. So starting with number 10, the game is Mice and Mystics. This game was released in 2012. It's rated currently at 7.5 on the 10-point scale on BoardGame Geek, and it's actually number 140 as far as where it's rated on the BoardGame Geek list. It's for 1 to 4 players, and it's a cooperative game. My family enjoys this game. We like it because it is cooperative. It's not so much of the take that. It's not so much of the competitive mode because you're playing against the game in essence. It's a very cute game. It's story based. As I said, it's cooperative. And without giving the story away, basically you are playing as mice. Your adversaries include rats. The big baddie is a cat. And again, I don't want to give away too much. Again, I said this game is fun, and it is. The only challenge or the only opportunity I would suggest is that you want to go through the game, and it's somewhat slow paced because once you go through the game once, you're probably not going to play it again. It's story based. So once you kind of play choose your own adventure type style, once you do that, and you play all the different variations in the adventure, you're probably not going to want to play it again. Maybe you will. We've played this more than once all the way through. But it's one of those games that you probably play once and you might not want to pick it up again. However, I want to say it's great. You definitely want to try to pick it up. I won't go through, I won't go through all the components, but I will tell you, very slick artwork, which I tend to be a big fan of if you've seen any of my other videos. It's story-based, so you're going to be doing lots of reading depending on the ages of the people in your family. This says ages 7 and up. Again, players 1 to 4, duration 60 to 90 minutes. And you have these player mats, not really player mats, but it's basically a map. It's almost like a dungeon crawling, a very intermediate, basic, entry-level dungeon crawling game. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the review of each of these games. I'll just tell you that on the top 10, this would be number 10 on our list. Great game to try out with your family and friends. Let's go on to number 9. Okay, let's go to number 9. Number 9 is Castle Panic. Castle Panic is another cooperative game similar to Mice and Mystics in that you're not competing against each other. You're competing against the game. And not all my games are going to be cooperative, by the way, on the top 10. However, Castle Panic is similar to Mice and Mystics in that way. But that's where the similarities end. This is not a choose your own adventure type style game. This is a game in which you are playing against the villains, if you will, that are trying to take over the castle. Villains being orcs and goblins and trolls. Castle Panic came out in 2009, according to my teleprompter. 712 on the BoardGame Geek list. It's currently 6.7 for a rating out of 10. You don't want to just base your decision on a game on the fact that it was rated 712 versus 714. Now, I talked to some people that say, I'm only going to buy games that are on the top 200 or the top 100 list based on you enjoying the game. So if you don't get a chance to try this game before you buy it, then hopefully you find a bunch of videos and you find out if it's a game that's right for you. However, I'm digressing. So Castle Panic is a game for 1 to 6 players, 10 years and up, and about 1 hour, they suggest. We played this game in 45 minutes. We played it in, I think, 35 minutes once. It's really dependent on the cards because it's card driven. Quickly in the components, you will have lots of these cardboard tokens. So this game is very card driven. There's about 49, not about, there is exactly 49 cards in this deck. And these cards allow certain actions. These are the attack cards. You use these cards to attack the monsters, and you have to pick the right cards to play at the right time. And then you have all these tokens. These tokens are face down, and you'll be picking up a token to determine who is coming out, who's the baddie that's coming out that you have to try to beat up. There's a great mechanic in here. I'll do a deeper review of the game for those that are interested. The board itself is the circular board that you might be able to see depending on the glare. Circular board, and basically there's a green, a red, a blue section, and the monsters start in these outer rings, and then based on those tiles, when you flip one, it will tell you which area, green, blue, or red, the monster actually advances closer to the center, which is the castle. Fun game, right? It's number 9 on my list, so it must be fun in my opinion. It's not the most fun game on the list. That's why it's number 9. Castle Panic. Check it out. Okay, and number 8 on the list is not cooperative, believe it or not. Number 8 is Tiny Epic Galaxies. This game came out in 2005. It's currently number 292 on the Board Game Geek list. It's got about a 7.4 rating for 1 to 5 players. It says high strategy, low downtime, high replayability, and small footprint. All very true. So Tiny Epic Galaxies. There's some others in the series of these tiny games from Scott Elms and team. But Tiny Epic Galaxies is a game that I tend to bring with me when I travel around because it's small, obviously. It's portable. That's part of the nice feature of this game. It's very card driven, and I'll do some close-up shots to show you, but very card driven. There's a variation in planets, and basically what you're trying to do is to colonize these planets, to try to get the most planets. Each planet has a certain number of victory points, and obviously whoever has the most victory points at the end wins. But the great part of this game is that it includes a bunch of the mechanics I really enjoy, which is dice. It's kind of worker placement as well, and it has this idea, there's a little bit of take that in this game, and that you both might be competing to try to colonize a planet and try to take over a planet and compete with each other trying to get the planet of choice, and whoever gets it first, the other person basically loses out, and they might have been trying to put a lot of effort in trying to get to that planet, and then unfortunately that time is wasted. So Tiny Epic Galaxies, component wise, there's a lot of wooden ships. And again, I'll have some pop-up videos to show better pictures of these things. But there's ships, there's various other components. This game, it's either one of those games you like a lot or you don't like. I played it with people that absolutely love it, and others that haven't been a big fan of it. The one downside I will tell you about this game that irritates me a bit is that you have these player cards. It's supposed to be a tiny game, right? So obviously everything's pretty tiny. If these boards were a little bit larger, it would have been easier because all of these wooden components are placed on various parts of this card. If for whatever reason the table gets bumped, which would not be a good thing in this game, all your pieces move and you might forget where things were. So that could be a bad thing. Other than that, I think there's a ton of replayability in this game. It's very fun and it's very portable. So that is my number 8, Tiny Epic Galaxies. Number 7 on the list is Istanbul. Istanbul is a game that came out in 2014. It's currently number 90 on the Board Game Geek list, and it's got about a 7.6 rating scale. According to the box, this is for 2 to 5 players. We've normally played it with 4 players, and the suggestion is about 45 minutes to an hour-ish. So worker placement at its best, in my opinion. I really enjoy this game a lot. In essence, you are competing to try to get the best things and goods before other players, and you're constantly moving around the board to try to obtain the goods before other people. Oh, I love this game. 2014. It's a great game. But anyhow, so Istanbul, great game, number 7. So number 6 on the list is Kingsburg. Kingsburg came out in 2008. It's currently number 219 on the Board Game Geek list. About a 7.2 rating currently on the 10-point scale. It's for 2 to 5 players, and the suggestion is it takes about 90 minutes with 2 to 5 players. And yes, I have seen it take close to 90 minutes. Kingsburg involves dice rolling, worker placement. 2 great mechanics that I absolutely love. Fantasy Flight Games does a great job in any of these dice rolling and worker placement type games. You're always trying to get the best spot before the other opponent. Kingsburg, number 6. Number 5 is Spyfall. Spyfall is very much a party game. Came out in 2014. It's number 227 on the Board Game Geek list. It's got a rating of about 7.3 for 3 to 8 players. It involves role playing and it involves voting. So in essence, there's many cards. The whole box is nothing but cards. I can open this up. Lots and lots and lots of cards. Yeah, this whole box is just filled up with cards. And on these cards, there are locations. What happens is, and you can't play this game with anything less than 3 players, and even with 3 players, it's a bit weak. You want to have more players. With more players, with 4, 5, 5-ish, up to 8, the game is awesome. It's very short. But again, what happens is everybody is going to be getting a card. So if you notice, all of these cards are in separate packages. What happens is no one is to see what is on these cards. So you have all these cards, and randomly everybody takes a card, and what's on these cards is a location. Everyone will have the exact same location except for one person. One person will have a card that says spy on it, and nobody knows what's on these cards except for the person that looks at the card and says, okay, I'm on a passenger train. So all of these cards are passenger train, passenger train, passenger train, but one of them is a spy. So if there were 5 people playing, I would get 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would mix these up. No one would know anything on these cards except for the fact that one is a spy and all the others are a location. So everyone would have a card, and then what happens is you go around and you try to give clues. You try to give clues in a way that doesn't give away what the location is, in this case a train, a passenger train, but you also want to make it clear enough for individuals that do have the location card to know that you know what the card is. Does that make sense? So it's all about working together as a team to determine who is the spy, and at the same time the spy is trying to listen to the clues being provided to try to figure out what the location is. Now in the beginning, when you first start playing this game, you're not going to know all the locations. There's many locations. Just to tell you some of the locations, there's an airplane, there's an amusement park, there's a bank, there's a movie studio, there's an ocean liner, there's a hospital, there's a casino, there's a zoo, there's a submarine. So there's many different locations, and if you're new to the game, when you start hearing the clues, you might not be able to correlate the clue to one of these locations because you don't know all the locations yet. But after a while, you're going to say, hey, they're talking about, maybe one of the clues was, I really like Swiss cheese. Like Swiss cheese. What does that have to do? Is there a restaurant? Well, potentially, if you're all the other players, maybe the location was a bank. And you're trying to give a clue in a way, Swiss cheese, the Swiss bank. So you're trying to give clues. I don't know if that one made sense. I know it would for me, and it would probably work for some of the people I play with because it's strange enough, but it has a connection to what the location is. Spyfall is a great game. It probably should have been even higher on my list. It's number 5. And if you like games that involve deduction, role playing, because you're trying to play out, I guess it's role playing, you're trying to identify who the spy is and who the other players are that aren't spies, and you're trying to vote. So at some point in the game you'll say, I think Susie is the spy, or I think Billy is the spy. So the spy is trying to figure out the location that everyone is at based on the clues, and all the other players are trying to figure out who the spy is based on the reactions when people give a clue. If someone gives a really way off clue like the one I just gave was Swiss cheese, who likes Swiss cheese? If people didn't realize, and I wasn't the spy because I'm trying to correlate that to a bank, but maybe someone heard that clue and said, what is he talking about? Swiss cheese? We're at a bank. That has nothing to do with the bank, and they didn't get it. So they might vote and say, hey, I think you're the spy. And I'd say, nope, I'm not. And then basically the spy would win because the spy didn't get called out. So number 5, Spyfall, great party game, great fun way to spend time figuring out who the spy is among your friends. Number 4 on the list is Mysterion. I did a whole review on Mysterion, one of the first board game reviews I've done. So I'll have a link here to get more detail on Mysterion. Mysterion came out in 2015. It's rated at 120 currently on the Board Game Geek list. It's got a 7.6 score as far as favorability, and it works best with a higher number of players, but it goes from 2 to 7 players. It is a cooperative game. So back to some of the cooperative games that we mentioned earlier on. But if you like games like Clue, if you remember the game Clue, and you've heard of the game Dixit, this is a combination of Clue and Dixit. You're trying to determine who the killer is, how they killed them, where they killed them, right? What weapon they used. So very similar to Clue. It's also very similar to Dixit. In fact, this is the people that make Dixit make Mysterion. There's very abstract cards that are used. So a ghost is providing clues, if you will, or thoughts in these abstract ways, which are basically pictures. And some of these pictures are pretty freaky, pretty weird. They're all cartoonish, but they're all still pretty strange in nature, very abstract. But the ghost provides clues, and then the psychics are somewhat working together to figure out how the individual was murdered.